right, here in the studio with us for more on this story is our rights environmental correspondent, Laila Johnson-Salami. Laila, you're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Steve. Good morning, OG. Great to be with you both.
Great to be with you
Good
too.
morning.
Laila, that was so graphic,
Absolutely.
what we just watched. Those
Fantastic.
elephants on the floor gave me just, goosebumps. Really
Absolutely.
Great work you're doing. Great work you're doing. Well done.
you.
Great work.
Thank you.
I think this is one of the big episodes that we have had so far, isn't it?
Certainly. It took quite a while for us to put this episode together. We've been working on our research for this for at least 5-6 months. The illegal wildlife trade is huge and often ignored. The only transnational crimes that are worth more value than the illegal wildlife trade, drugs, human beings, and weapons. After that, it's wildlife, just to show how big of a trade this illicit trade actually is. And I think it's time that countries like Nigeria that are playing such active roles in the illegal trade start speaking up through the media and defending what we have left. Because, we're losing our wildlife, but we are also being used as a major transit and transshipment hub for these products coming in from other African countries. And it has to stop somewhere. And we just hope that by sounding certain alarms, it's taken more seriously, because it's getting bad. And I must say, while we're on this, that the Nigeria Customs Service, the Ministry of Environment, NESRIA, other agencies have really been trying, especially this year, partnering with international organizations and other governments to really try and fight wildlife crime. And we've had huge seizures in Nigeria this year. I believe 4 big seizures this year alone, worth billions and billions of naira. So it shows that there is more will, and we are getting there. But this is something that we have to continue sounding the alarm on until we drop down those ranks. It's depressing news.
Yeah, let's talk about that seizure that you highlighted, that it was 22 million worth of
Billion
worth of ivory and
pangolin
scales. What happened there? Tell us how that process went.
Sure thing. So about a month before, the Nigeria Customs Service were alerted to a warehouse, and they had partnered with the Wildlife Justice Commission, another great organization fighting wildlife crime. And they'd been alerted to this warehouse where these products were being held, seized the products. So on the 4th of August, they held a press briefing, and I believe that 3 people were then arrested in relation to that particular seizure. But the kingpin, I believe, is still on the run. And this is what usually happens in situations like this. You can find the people around, but then getting the actual kingpin. And don't forget that a lot of these seizures are linked. So a seizure in January could be the exact same group that are involved in a seizure in October. It's not as if it's different criminal networks. There's just one big network here that we're looking at, and it's really, really deep. So they acted on that intelligence. They went in and they seized the products worth 22 billion naira. And some people say, what do you do with these products after? You have to do what Kenya does. You have to do what countries that show that they're not going to stand for this. Even China, we showed a clip of China in that video doing it. You've got to get rid of these products.
Yes.
At the end of the day, if you don't get rid of these products, someone somewhere is going to take 1 or 2, go and make their money off of it, and continue to fuel the trade. It has to stop somewhere.
Is that the best way to deal with seized goods like that, though? We were discussing, off camera the other time, and I was interested in what do they actually do with, with the penguin scales and the ivories. If there's a genuine trade line that the government can benefit from, why don't you seize, confiscate these things, and then legalize the sales to appropriate authorities? I don't know how it works. That's why
I'm here to explain it to you. Don't worry. I've been asked that question before, and I'm here to explain it to you. Look, if you go and legalize the scales, right? Let's say you're like, okay, we have all of these pangolin scales. Let's legalize it, right? So that we can sell this off. The only thing that you're doing is you're continuing to fuel the trade, because more and more pangolins are going to continue being killed. And we've spoken about this on this Go Wild series before. A pangolin, for example, one pangolin, it's a mammal. It can only give birth once every 2 years. So the rate at which pangolins are going into extinction is absolutely crazy. In Asia right now, based on traditional Chinese medicine and the use of pangolin scales in traditional Chinese medicine, there are literally no pangolins left, which is why they've shifted their operations into Africa to finish off African pangolins. And the truth is, we're going to wake up one day and there will be no pangolins left. So if you try and find a way to then legalize the sale of these products, the only thing that you're doing is fueling the illegal trade. At the end of the day, hundreds and hundreds of elephants that you kill to send over for ivory. You can then say, okay, let's legalize and do something around this. The only thing you're doing is encouraging the killing of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of elephants more.
But what are they used for? Because that explains the reason why this trade is still booming. What are they used for? And at what point, at what end?
Okay, so let's start with elephants. Elephants are used for absolutely nothing of use. It's a thing of status and saying that you have ivory hanging in your house. Don't forget there's also a growing middle class in China, that certain products that they couldn't, China and Vietnam, certain products that they couldn't afford before, they can now have those products as status symbols. You go into Jakonde Market, for example, and I asked one of the traders there what something was. They use ivory as signature stamp things. So you're killing elephants just for your own luxurious gain and for a thing of status.
Right.
Don't forget that during the colonial era, it was the West that were killing African elephants for ivory. Now we have the East killing African elephants for ivory, and it has to stop somewhere. With pangolins, the main use is traditional Chinese medicine. However, Mr. Steve, there is absolutely no empirical evidence to support anything to say that the pangolin scales are beneficial as a medicinal product. Absolutely no empirical evidence to support it whatsoever. There's also a huge drive because they're used as aphrodisiacs too. That's another thing with pangolin scales. So you can see that the uses, China and Vietnam mainly.
Yes. Like you rightly highlighted, we only have about 500 elephants in Nigeria. So we definitely have to find a way to conserve
way less.
these
Some
mammals
conservationists say we have 94 elephants in the country. So
94?
Around that figure, so way less.
One straight down to Ekpe the other day. Did you see that viral video? You know, I mean, we don't have them here. So I'm wondering, how did we get to the top of the rack? You know, as the number one in this
that was the question.
And that's where the problem comes in, because the only way that we could have risen to the top of these ranks is corruption, a complete lack of political will, and a complete lack of law enforcement. Nigeria simply doesn't have the elephant population to supply the ongoing trade that we are seeing. However, Nigeria has diverse trade links, and our ports are used thoroughly by illegal criminal networks to get products from Africa outside the shores of this country. I must also say that since a lot of eyes have been put on the Apapa port with regards to illegal wildlife crime, a lot of wildlife illegal networks have shifted their operations to Port Harcourt, Onne, etc., to get the products out from there. So you can see shifts happening as they see law enforcement stepping up. But literally, corruption, a lack of political will, and law enforcement have driven us to this point. There is no reason Nigeria should be the #1 hub on the African continent for the exportation of these products, yet here we are.
Yeah, so the problem is the corrupt network, like you've just said. But I would also wonder, are you going to follow up on the seizure of those pangolin scales and
Absolutely. So the Nigeria Customs Service, and when we went for that press briefing on the 4th of August, one of the questions that I posed to the CG, I had asked if we were also going to be able to witness the destruction of these items. And the response that I got then was that, yes, you will. That obviously, you can't destroy the items while a court case is still ongoing because it serves as evidence. But that once it's done, they'll invite the press. So we'll wait to see if that happens. That once it's done, we'll invite the press and you will all be able to witness the destruction of these items. But there are fears. DC Joseph Atta, the national PRO for the Nigeria Customs Service, said that I'd asked an unfair question by saying, how can we ensure that these items that are still sitting at the ports are there and they're there intact? The entire point of that question is we can't be sure because there is that distrust for the government. There is that distrust for agencies because we've gotten to this point. So I cannot be sure. No one can be sure. And we would like to be sure. But at the end of the day, that is the response that we got to that.
That press conference, you don't think that came a bit too early? I'm saying this because, one, you're still on the trail of the kingpin. And this reminds me of the approach that both the police and the EFCC tend to use. If you're aware, part of what one of the bills passed by the Lagos State House of Assembly was to say, don't parade any suspects until you have finalized on the investigation. It looks to me like now that the people behind the news is out, so you've basically given an escape route, if you're not careful, to the kingpins behind these things. We will parade a few guys as what do we call them, suspects, etc., the guys behind it. But everybody will know that, these fellows cannot pull off this sort of multi-billion-dollar trade.
Absolutely.
How close are we, or what's the likelihood that there is the political will to deal with the obviously powerful people that are behind this trade?
I must say quite a few environmentalists and conservationists that I have spoken to do feel as though that press briefing did come a bit too soon, because when stuff like that happens and it's put out in the press, obviously the kingpin can then run away even further, or whatever the case may be. But I must say as well that based on what I've been covering this year, based on my interactions with the Nigeria Customs Agency and other agencies too, I genuinely believe that we are starting to have that political will now. Even if we didn't before, I genuinely believe that we are starting to have that political will now, because all roads lead to Nigeria and all eyes are on Nigeria. You can ignore a problem for 10 years, but you're going to wake up one day and you're not going to be able to ignore that problem any longer. I remember even after the press briefing that we went for, members of the Nigeria Customs Service even coming up to me and saying, look, we really need you as a journalist to look into the illegal trade of rosewood, for example, that is getting too much and everything. So there are people in the Nigeria Customs Service that are sick and tired of what they're having to see. Don't forget that when corruption happens, it's not an entire agency. It's 1, 2, or 3 bad eggs within that agency that are allowing it to be fueled. And I think now as well with COP26 and a huge focus on climate change as well, there are certain things that countries like Nigeria are looking to preserve and protect. And one of those things is our forests and our wildlife. And the biggest loss, or the biggest driver of the losses that we have, is the illegal wildlife trade. So I genuinely believe that we're at that turning point and it's just for us to get it right. I do have faith that it's going to happen. There are great partnerships that we are seeing, but it's about supporting these agencies, mobilizing the public to ensure that we can report wildlife crime, making people aware. That's like us sitting down and having this discussion now. These are the healthy discussions that we need to have so that as Nigerians, we are aware of just how bad this actually is and what we need to do to protect what we have left. Because quite frankly, at the rate that things are going at, we're not going to have anything left in 10 years' time.
I really like that point about mobilizing the public to report these illicit trade. Now, tell me, what parts of Nigeria are, complicit in these trade?
It's interesting. That's actually a very good question. When it comes to deforestation and the illegal wildlife trade, Lagos obviously plays a huge role because this is where most things are coming in and out of the country from. Cross River States also has a huge problem. Don't forget that Cross River also borders with Cameroon. You can even go up north to Kano. There are issues all over Nigeria when it comes to the illegal wildlife trade. Taraba State, just follow our national parks around, and really and truly, wherever you see forestation left is where most of the issues are happening. But Lagos probably plays the most crucial role.
That's because
given
of
that the biggest port in Nigeria is right here, and given that the port that most of these products are leaving the shores from Nigeria is from here as well. So, yeah.
And the trade route is China and Vietnam, like you've just said.
That's the main trade route. So what usually happens is the traffickers are not going to leave Nigeria and head straight to China or Vietnam. They're going to stop at a transit point where they have corrupt shipping agents or freight agents that can help them to bypass certain risk profiling systems. So then they move that container to another ship. They now make it look as though, okay, this ship left from Singapore and it didn't come from Nigeria. And that way they can get away with what they're doing. So Nigeria also needs to develop stronger partnerships with countries in Southeast Asia that are also fueling this. We need to have stronger partnerships with agencies, customs in these countries and other agencies in these countries to ensure that we are working together, because this is not a Nigerian problem. This is not just an African problem. This is a global problem, considering the fact that it's the 4th most profitable transnational crime in the world.
Well, I mean, we're almost running out of time, but I was going to ask you how much of faith you have in the authorities, given the sort of responses that we heard from the gentleman, the spokesperson for customs, who obviously didn't want to be asked, some jamming questions. Do you think that we can trust these guys to deliver?
How much faith I have in the authorities will depend on the kind of responses that we get to this report. When authorities are triggered in a bad way, you get those responses. When they're triggered in a good way, you also get those responses. I know some of the responses that we got to our illegal logging episode that came out. At the end of the day, people who don't want you to talk are going to find a problem, but we're just here to report the truth at Arise News, and that's what we're going to continue doing.
Well done, Laila. Thank you very much. And I look forward to that follow-up. I hope they get to burn those ivories
Fingers crossed.
and pangolin scales.
3 billion.
Well done.
in flames.
Down the drain. Down the drain.
It's going to burn, whether you like it or not.
We should burn.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.